Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, what a weekend. Not necessarily in terms of great games, but we're recapping the Super Wildcard weekend and what took place on the football field, because there are a lot of teams with a lot of questions to be answered.
We have like one really riveting game all weekend, and then we had a bunch of car crashes to watch. And so that was pretty good. I was saying I thought the AFC side would be a little bit more competitive. Turns out neither one of them were. It was just the Battle of Motown, really.
Yeah, no, and we'll get into that. So we got a lot to discuss today. You know, CJ Stroud made his absolute, proclamation or announcement that he is here. The Lions, like Tyson said, we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about the Dolphins because that was pretty disastrous. But Tyson, I want to start first. When we talk about the Super Wild Card, like we have 18 weeks, right? 17 games. And I feel like every single year we come into the playoffs and we forget about what football is about, what playoff football is about, what preparation, physicality, understanding what you're supposed to do. And I think the teams that we saw win this weekend were the teams that came in with a plan, the teams that had better coaches, the teams that understood what they were there to do, and the ones who just said, you know what, we're going to fly around, we're going to take this up to a next notch. Like, it's time to play some playoff football. It's time to win a championship. We can throw all this stuff out that we've seen in the regular season, right? Like the Dolphins were great early on, and maybe they can do it now. No, it's who's playing good now, who has the pedigree, who has the coaches and the preparation, and who has the quarterback.
It's not the NBA, man. Like it's a coaches league for a reason. Like there's a reason that everybody's recycling right now, trying to find somebody that can light a spark because the Philadelphia Eagles run the ball 5 times in the first half. Dallas comes out with zero identity, and it was just like, oh man, this is happening right now. The Dolphins want to run wide receiver screens on 3rd and 2 all day long with with one of the better running games in the NFL. It was just every single box is like you can't really get up at Stefanski right now just because. I mean, that thing got away from him quick, and it wasn't like they were poor play calls necessarily. It was just bad decisions. But coaching matters in the NFL to a degree that we don't really give it credit for during the regular season because, like, the players win the games, and so the players get the credit, which is totally fair. And then the playoffs start, and it's like, oh man, we got a whale on one sideline and some dude that looks like he doesn't even really want to be here right now on the other.
And that's where we're going to start here with the Eagles and Cowboys getting completely embarrassed. And Tyson, we talking about coaching.
Is that a Mike McCarthy fat joke?
Well, it might have been. That's what I was thinking. That's where I wanted to start. But we talk about these. We're talking about coaches and quarterbacks and preparation, and we're starting here for a reason. Because on Sunday afternoon, the Cowboys got completely embarrassed early. And you look at the final score, 48-32, it was not that close. The Packers came in prepared, ready to go. Their quarterback played better, and that was ultimately the end of it. And then we flip over into Monday night with the Eagles and the Buccaneers, and it was the same damn thing. The Bucs were ready. Their defense knew what to do, and the Eagles looked like they had just rolled in off the beach. And it was their first day on the job. I don't know, and we're going to talk about which job is better because we both believe that there may be 2 head coaching positions opened up because of those performances. I just don't know what direction that we want to take this because I think they got embarrassed in different ways. So I'll throw it to you. Which team do you want to talk about first?
Let's just start with Dallas. Their game was first, so we'll get that out of the way. It was just another Mike McCarthy masterclass and the Dallas Cowboys masterclass of being just wildly unprepared for the moment. It's how many times do we have to see this 12-5, 12-5, 12-5 get clapped like by somebody that shouldn't even really be on the same field as you? We're both guilty of. I took Cowboys team total over, so I was grateful that it ended up getting close, but that it was 27-0 at one point, and it had all the telltale signs. Right as soon as Dak threw that pick 6, it was like this is a Cowboys collapse. I don't know if it's organizational. I don't know if it's the players. I don't know if it's coaching, but it's been a stink on this organization for 30 years now, pushing since the last time they got over the mountaintop. I don't know how you can look at that as a Cowboys fan and be anything other than pissed because you're getting the easiest matchup out of all these teams. Like maybe the Bucs might have been an easier matchup for Philadelphia, but they were going on the road. You're 16-0 at home in the last 16 games. We know the numbers, the stats, all the stuff. The defense is crazy at home. And then you let a guy with no playoff experience not even target the guy who's become the de facto number one in Jaden Reed, and it was Wicks tearing you up and Romeo Dobbs. I said last week, one of these guys is going to make their case for the number one. How do you put a stamp on something like that? What do you have, 200 yards? He was all over the field. I just, I don't know necessarily where you go from here. I think you got to burn the boats, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? This one felt a little bit different, more disappointing, I think, in years past because they came back and won the division. They really only
This
got
felt
embarrassed
real.
twice.
All
Like
year
this
it felt
felt
real.
like their defense is good. They have a path to go and play 2 playoff games at home. Something they should take care of business. They showed it in the past. They're playing a Packers team on paper. That defense could get shredded up by the Cowboys, and we saw it in the second half. But by then, it was too little, too late, and they don't care. The clock's their issue. It's not the Cowboys. They just beat them in the first half. Like they're not worried about anything. And so when you take that into account and you talk about Dak Prescott and what the ceiling is with him at quarterback for the Cowboys, he just had the best year of his career under Mike McCarthy. So you have to take that into account when you're talking about this going forward, because Tyson, if that's the best of his career and you get set up and you're the number 2 seed and you play a team that's the youngest in the NFL, a quarterback who's making his first playoff start, like you said, a quarterback that midway through the season, people didn't know if he'd be a starter. Like that was the
He
conversation.
stinks.
Now, I got to say, I'm glad I never jumped off the boat. Like I'm a Jordan Love fan, so I'm going to pat myself on the back because this kid's emerging and this kid looks legit. You get outplayed by Jordan Love in his first playoff game. Tyson, we're not talking about Dak Prescott like it's his second season. This is who he is. And this is a Cowboys franchise that no matter how good of a path they have, no matter how advantageous their scenario is, or anything going forward like that, they continue to show that they can't live up to the moment.
Well, he's got 2 playoff wins. This was contract time. This was time to go to the NFC title game and earn your record-setting deal that he was going to sign a 3-year, $220 million contract or whatever. Now he's on the books next year for $59.5 million. You got a decision to make, and it's not going to be a comfortable one. Trading for Trey Lance was fun, and it's nice to take the flyer, but that kid's probably not ready to roll. So then now you're. If you move on from Dak, are you getting Kirk Cousins? Are you kicking the tires on Jimmy G? Are you checking on Jacoby? Like these are the guys out there. So upgrade wise, I don't necessarily know where you go from here, but at a certain point, again, I'll mention basketball because we see it all the time. The Miami Heat are a really fun team to watch, and they've made the finals, so it's not necessarily the same thing. Okay, let's take the Bulls, actually. Let's go back to the Jimmy Butler Bulls, where they just kept making the playoffs, and then they kept picking 21st. And then they never got a difference maker, and they couldn't get up there. And I'm not advocating for the Cowboys to tank. My Eagle fandom would like that, certainly. But it just, where do you go? Because there's no easy fix. There's no Band-Aid that you can just rip off. Like in Philadelphia, I think we know what the stink was. In Dallas, you got to fumigate because we don't know why did that happen? It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, and this is a defense under Dan Quinn has been top 5 in the league, and they got absolutely ripped apart. Like there was no adjustment. There was nothing that they came
tampering
into.
Rules.
Yeah, I think so.
Won something since the Seahawks job opened. Like that thing is closed shut. He took the job already, whether he signed the contract or not, and then you got to go coach again.
Well, that's the problem. I think that's a story for a different day that we can discuss. But I think that has something to do with a lot of situations that we've seen when it comes playoff time for teams around the league. But this is a defense, Tyson. Like this is supposed, like you said, the numbers at home are incredible. They're playing a team who's inexperienced. So this is supposed to be a dominating faction here. That doesn't happen. They're probably going to lose Dan Quinn, who, let's be honest, when he took over the job, it vaulted this defense to being considered elite. Before that, they were horrible. Dan Quinn took over. You're like, wow, they got something here. When he leaves, and let's say they do fire Mike McCarthy, you're kind of left with bare bones there because Mike McCarthy's your play caller. Dan Quinn's your defensive coordinator. That's considering if he leaves. This to me feels like it's a strip down because you can't just hire a coach in here and say, here's your Dak Prescott $60 million contract. Like I think if you do the route that you fire Mike McCarthy, I think you got to make some really hard decisions. We'll get into that when we get into the job. But like you said, these are the type of losses that make you think about things and deep thoughts. The Packers have had those in their past when they've been embarrassed on a couple of large stages. They don't overreact. They just stick to what they do, and this is what culminates in Jordan Love and a group of young guys who everybody was making fun of the Packers. Oh my God, they don't have a veteran. They're so young. They're going to look so stupid, and now they're playing in the divisional round. Like that's what good organizations do.
But the entire time in Dallas, they didn't look dead. Like they didn't look like they didn't want to be there. The Philadelphia Eagles looked like they didn't want to be there.
Oh, it was embarrassing. Like that, there's no other way to put it. And we use it for both. I think when we're talking about the Cowboys and their embarrassment, it was like, wow, your face gets
I can't
red
believe they
like,
lost to that team in this scenario.
In this scenario, and you're like, man, he kind of made a mistake here. The Eagles, it was like, you should be embarrassed to even show your face because that's the type of level and type of effort that we saw that defense. The worst tackling performance I've seen in a long time. They looked like a JV team trying to tackle a college team. It was embarrassing. They looked unprepared. The defense had no clue what they were doing. The offense, for legitimately 17 weeks, couldn't figure out that they could throw the ball in the middle of the field. There was nothing creative. The quarterback was put in bad situations, and the good situations he was put in, he couldn't execute. Nobody looked like there was any energy on that sideline. It was a complete no-show and a complete affront to anything related to football.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we get some I don't know if we need Josina Anderson on the case or what, but there's got to be something happened to this football team. I think going back more than just the 49ers game, we were talking a little bit before, they didn't have a convincing win all season long. Like week one, they started off and it was we were sitting here talking, yeah, but it's Bill Belichick, right? Like this is what he does against. It's the first game of the year, things like that. It turns out that the Patriots suck, and then you just keep moving on down the list. And yes, they were beating good teams, but they were scraping by kind of on the talent more so than on the scheme. And then all of a sudden, it was like talent levels found a level. Us versus you got a lot closer, and Philadelphia got ran out of the building. And their responses to those things wasn't that of a team that went to the Super Bowl last year. Wasn't that of a team with some resolve, some real heart. We're going to figure this thing out. It was, all right, man, let's just roll over and try again. We're young. We got next year, but this was Jason Kelsey's last game. Brandon Graham says he wants to come back. We'll see if Howie Roseman and co let him come back. Fletcher Cox is probably gone. How many times is he going to play on a 1 year over and over again? You don't know what's happening with Lane Johnson. This was the end of an era in Philadelphia, maybe, or at least one of the most successful ones they've ever had as an organization. And it went out like that, where there wasn't like Dallas was fighting. They were trying to stay in the game. Philadelphia didn't even – it was 4th and 11 on the last possession of the game for them, and they threw the ball 6 yards. It was just another little tiny tick in the box of like, oh, this team doesn't care at all.
Yeah, and the thing is, Tyson, we talk about this game 32-9, and it's a blowout, and it should have been 50 points. Like the Bucs should have scored 50 points, maybe even 60. And the way they were rolling and the mistakes that they had that took points off the board. There was a point in time in this game where for multiple possessions, it was 16-9. The Eagles had the ball, and they had an opportunity to go down and tie the game on the road in a playoff game with an opportunity to continue your season. The inability for them to look forget faking it. Like they couldn't even I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Like they couldn't make up the fact that they could look competent. Like there was no rhyme or reason to anything they did on offense. Every single time that they got the ball, I was expecting a 3rd and out or 3 and out. Complete malpractice from any game planning sense, whether that's the offensive coordinator, what's the head coach who's on the offensive side of the ball. Probably all of it. The quarterback continued. I got major questions about Jalen Hurts. I really do. Like this, we were talking about him after what he did last season. Yes, it was an easy schedule, but the way he performed in the playoffs was incredible. When you come off that Super Bowl victory, you're like, okay, that was unbelievable. He went toe-to-toe with Mahomes and, may have outplayed him, all things considered. And then you go through this season, you keep cutting him some slack. Well, he's doing stuff here. He's doing stuff here. I got to say now, I have major, major question marks about Jalen Hurts and whether that's fair or not, because he's in a horrendous scheme that can't play at this level. Maybe that's not fair to him, but the body language, and we talked about this early on, just sitting on the bench with no emotion. Sweet. That's great when your team's steamrolling people. You know what I never saw do that? Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning. Like these guys are constantly communicating. You pan from what Baker Mayfield was doing on the Bucs sideline. You pan to what Jalen Hurts was doing on the Eagles sideline. and it was a complete 180, the complete opposite. And I threw out some hyperbole with Breeze, Brady, and Manning. We're talking about Baker Mayfield. This guy's on his 4th team. This guy looked like a better leader than Jalen Hurts, who just got paid a massive deal and is supposed to be the face of the franchise. It was jarring to compare the two sidelines.
Well, Baker earned himself some money. I mean, he's earned
He did.
himself some money all year, but that was like we're going into a divisional round now with Baker Mayfield, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, and Brock Purdy. Like one of those guys is going to be your quarterback for the NFC, which is crazy. I'm not as down on Hurts as you are. I'm gonna, I got to see whatever cleanup surgeries he needs to have this offseason because we'll see. He didn't come to the press conference in a full body brace. Both of us kind of thought, he'd throw a little Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah.
And with the scheme too, but they're like, we're not absolving him because, for as much as we want to circle the middle of the field with no routes and highlight, guys standing 2 feet away from each other on these route combinations, there's a lot of times guys are open and either it's on him for predetermining where the ball is going to go, or it's on the coaching staff for telling him, hey, Jalen, this is where the ball is going to go. And if the second one's the case, I mean, we'll never know, right? But next year will tell us more. Yeah, I've never seen a professional sports team quit in the way that they did. Like the only thing I could LeBron against the Mavs when he just kind of rolled up and went home. Is there any other situation like the Mets collapse? That's close to my heart too. But those are the only ones that I can really think of to even compare. And the similarities are that very, very talented teams or individuals, something went wrong and they mentally broke. And if you're Nick Sirianni and this is your job, is you don't call, you're not supposed to be, we don't know, but you're not calling the plays on offense, you're not calling the plays on defense. Your job is communication, relationships, right? You're an HR guy, boil it all the way down, right? That's not what you want to see out of that guy. And it's going to be ridiculous if he's on the market with this winning percentage that he has. But I think you got to tell the whole story when you talk about, if he's going to get fired, because this was a collapse that is pretty – I can't think of any rivals off the top of my head in modern football, at least.
Yeah, it's definitely one that's pretty unrivaled, especially considering where this team was last year at this time. So with that being said, we think – we think potentially both these could be coming available, Tyson. So with that said, let's touch on this quickly before we talk about the rest of the games. Which job do you think's better? Like for you personally. Now, let's say you're a head coach and you're a hot candidate and you're like, okay, I have my pick of the litter here. Who would I rather be in charge of? The Dallas Cowboys or the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, so it kind of goes to me. I think it's like, what are you looking for? Everyone's, well, you don't want to deal with Jerry. I feel like the Cowboys meddle less than Jeff Lurie and Howie Roseman do, and put their hands kind of all over things. That's something to consider. I also think that Philadelphia is always closer to hitting the reset button than people think. Whereas I don't envision 80-whatever-year-old Jerry Jones really going all in on a rebuild. Like, he doesn't know how much longer he's going to have owning the football team. He wants to see a Super Bowl. If you're a guy that wants to go in and compete a Bill Belichick type or something like that, like maybe that's the job for you. If you want organizational control, again, that might be closer to the job for you, but you're not going to get either one. And when you run down the rosters, it's like superstar rusher for the Cowboys, Michael Parsons. You got superstars on defense for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Carter had a horrible back half of his rookie season. Nobody talks about that for some reason. He's still going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, which is crazy, but Reddick is a great edge rusher. You go on offense, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got A.J. Brown, okay, and then it comes down to who do you want as quarterback? Do you want to be able to make that decision? Because outside of Jeff Lurie, Jalen Hurts is the most safe guy in Philadelphia right now. And if you don't think that those things are fixable or that you can elevate him back to 2022 level play, then you might want the Cowboys job. And Eagles fans are going to be pissed because the roster's loaded and all this stuff, but you're about to fire a guy probably coming off going to the Super Bowl last year. And again, I kind of err on the side. He probably shouldn't have a job after the way this team looked. But then you fired Doug Peterson before that, a couple years after he won the Super Bowl, right? It just kind of is becoming a pattern. Do you want to be the next guy in line?
That's the concern, and Tyson and I will talk more about the Eagles. If you're interested in this, we have another podcast we do called Filthy. We're going to do more of a deep dive on the Eagles there. That's more Philadelphia Eagles centric. So we're going a little light on this. Like, this is a big story right now, so we're paying more attention to it on a national scale than we normally would. But I think honestly, if I'm looking at the rosters, man, I think the Cowboys is a better roster. And we came into the season talking about, wow, the Eagles still have maybe the best roster in the NFL. Well, that changed quickly because we're looking at this. Darius Slay got cooked. He's coming off of surgery. He just got hurt. We have no clue what his status is going to be heading into next season. Bradbury's done. The rookie corners don't look like they're ready. The secondary is atrocious. The linebacking core is a joke. And then we talk about the young guys with Fletcher Cox departing. Yeah, Jalen Carter had a good first half. His back half, he disappeared. Jordan Davis, out of shape. We have no clue how good he is. On the offensive side, Jason Kelsey's retiring. Cam Jurgens had a bad day against the Bucs. Like, he had
a lot of bad days this year, but we didn't talk about it.
My goodness. So maybe he fits better at the center position. That's his position coming out of college. That's a little bit too in the weeds, but you're talking about an aging offensive line, which the Cowboys also have. I just think there's more pieces in place with the Cowboys right now, where you have your star and Micah Parsons, which is unblockable. The Eagles didn't get any pressure. It comes down to, do I want to pay $60 million to Dak Prescott, who we kind of know what he is, or Hurts, who, let's be honest, this is his third season. You want to talk about a roller coaster. I mean, we're going from, man, we don't know if he can play, to, holy smokes, this guy can win the MVP, to, wow, he looks good again, to, my God, man, he can't read a defense. So I think
the highs have been higher. The highs have been higher for Jalen, but how many coaches are going to want to hope to catch the peak, right? Where they can just go get Dak and be like, hey, maybe I could fix him. And that's what it's going to come down to. I really don't see a world that Dallas goes young with a head coach. Like, I don't think this is a Ben Johnson spot or a young OC or whoever out there. I think this is more of an established kind of spot. It's it's a little unfortunate Dan Quinn in Seattle probably already got the job done.
Okay, let's transition to this. CJ Stroud. We're going to talk positive here because, my God, if we want to talk about quarterbacks who have emerged, this kid is just a flat-out truth. It helped that his defense came up big. Let's be honest, a lot less pressure on him, but I wouldn't even matter if it was pressure on him, because he seems to take that and elevates. Like, he has no issue doing that. What the Texans have built here in just 1 year, this is why we call the National Football League not for long. Because they went from being a laughingstock of the National Football League to being, are these guys ever going to lose this division again? Like, that's where we're at with them. Because you have elite pieces. Stingley, unbelievable this game. Will Anderson Jr. with a high ankle sprain looked dominant. Then CJ Stroud, he's missing two of his weapons. No, doesn't matter. Under control, poised. This offensive line is built properly. DeMeco Ryans looks like an elite head coach.
He's a dude.
This right here is what we talk about when, if you get the coach and quarterback right, and the Texans did, the sky's the limit. And I got to say, this may be hyperbole, and it doesn't matter. They could lose by 60 next week to the Ravens. This would not change my mind. What they've done in this first year, this iteration, this is a team, not just in the division, this is a team in the AFC that you have to fear for the next decade.
I think you go a step farther. I think it's a team in the league that everybody is circling like, oh, we got to go play the Texans. We got to be on our P's and Q's, which is crazy, right? From where they were 3 years ago or whatever, genuinely the laughingstock of the league. They're employing Deshaun Watson. They get off him in the trade. It's like, I don't know what's going to happen. Deshaun doesn't play this year. Boom. Hit the lottery. Like, you just got the one. You got the 1-1, basically. Like, if you're redrafting the NFL – after this year, CJ Stroud might go 4. Like, I don't know if that's hyperbole, but like, it's going to go Mahomes, Allen, and then you're kind of taking your pick there. Who else you want?
Right.
Talk to the right team, and CJ Stroud might be that guy. It's truly crazy. Nico Collins, bona fide 1-1. Just like Tank Dell might be 2, but Nico Collins is a bona fide stud. I don't know how many times Devin Singletary can be buried in one career to come back and look like he does. This entire team, man, like the Browns could have scored 50 and the Texans would have scored 52. They were not losing that football game. I think that was clear when the Browns went 75 yards on back-to-back drives in like 5 total minutes. And then all the Texans did was respond immediately. This was a we're ready for the moment kind of game. And one we didn't see coming, one that I don't think a lot of national media people saw coming. I don't think many NFL people honestly saw this coming. I think you always talk about timelines, and it's can we get everything to click in this 3-year window and stuff. But some guys, like this guy, and like what Jordan Love looked like on Sunday, timelines don't exist. If I'm on the football team, we can win games.
The Browns, it was fun, right? Like it was Flacco, the story, just 2 mistakes and that cost them. Was that it probably was a tipping point, right? Especially with the way that the Texans were moving the ball, the ease at which they were scoring, and then you have the other team in the Browns, you make a crucial mistake, pick 6, another interception. That's going to hurt. And it ultimately did, but 0 points in the second half for the Browns. It just felt like, oh boy, the air is out of this team here. But I'm curious with what the Browns do, because this was supposed to be a team, and it's funny that both these teams are playing each other, because Deshaun Watson, the Browns are supposed to be the team once they got Deshaun Watson that are in the same window that the Texans currently find themselves in. Like this, okay, we have a team around them, should be able to propel us forward. Joe Flacco came in. This offense looks way better than with Deshaun Watson. You're still paying Deshaun Watson a lot of money.
I have major just won a playoff game.
Yeah, I have major questions about where they move going forward. Like, you have to play Deshaun. Is it 2 more years of purgatory with his contract? Then you kind of restart. Do they look to move him? Does anybody want it? Like, that's the questions I have, because the defense can be as good as it was this year. But if you don't, like, as we just saw, if you don't have a quarterback who can go toe to toe with some of these top guys in the league, you got no chance.
And Myles Garrett was a ghost for the last half of the season as well. Like he didn't make an impact on half the games they played down the stretch. And I'm not just talking box score wise. I'm talking like on the field. It was kind of like Laremy Tunsil put him in jail for most of this game, and Laremy Tunsil got hurt immediately. It was like, oh, Myles just might wreck this game, and the Browns will be moving on, no sweat, right? Two strip sacks and a force of whatever. Tunsil comes back in hurt. He's chest bumping his quarterback after 50-yard dimes, right? It's a tough look for the Cleveland Browns. But honestly, do you feel bad at all? Like, this is an organization that put themselves here on purpose. Like they chose this so they can wear all of it. Remember when they took C.J. Stroud, and it was, yeah, I mean, you got the quarterback, but you traded your pick next year. How do you think the Cardinals feel, right? about inheriting right now? What is it sitting at, 23, 24? There's 8 teams left, so it'd be 20 something.
23, I believe.
Okay, so we're both math majors,
clearly
highly educated. Yeah, dude, I don't know. I just personally, all year long, all we heard was there's no good young quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, there's no good, the quarterback play has gone so far below par, all this stuff. They didn't put this dude on national television. They didn't put Jordan Love in the second half of the year on national television. There's your guys. That's who the NFL is moving towards. If you can't play like them, you better find somebody who can, or hope that your guy can get there. Because as of right now, it's 15 in Kansas City, it's 17 in Buffalo. It's those guys. It's Joe Burrow, and if you don't have one of them, good luck.
Well, the Los Angeles Rams moved off of who they thought was not one of those guys in Jared Goff, and they went and traded for Matt Stafford with the Detroit Lions, and it worked out for the Rams, right? Like, they won a Super Bowl. Matt Stafford, I mean, he might be top 5, and I put this in one of our group chats. He might be top 5 of our lifetime, to be completely honest, for what he did in Detroit and how good he is. It's ridiculous. But the Lions win this one, and I think everybody in the country wanted the Lions to win. This team is fun. This team is gritty. This team finds a way to win. Dan Campbell, I mean, there's never been a more lovable grizzly bear, I think, besides maybe Smokey the Bear, than Dan Campbell. You had to feel good for Jared Goff. Just facing the team, basically, we don't want you. We don't think you're good enough. I think he got thrown under the bus. I think he was scapegoated. And sure, the ceiling with Stafford's higher. I think everybody would say he's better than Jared Goff. But for him to win this game, it was like, oh, you know what? I can play too.
And the ceiling for Stafford ended up being, 7 points higher, because they lost that Super Bowl to New England like 9-3. Right? Like that was the difference, and it worked out for the Rams. I've seen a lot of people, this is the most win-win trade in NFL history, all that stuff. Maybe the season's still ongoing, so let's hold off a little bit. I don't think Jared Goff's turning back into a pumpkin, though. Like, this offense is so much fun. Laporta wasn't even supposed to play. And then
Dude.
when they get that touchdown, just with ridiculous motion, and they bring in
Dan
Dan
Skipper.
Skipper, I think, and that actually pulls the linebacker out of the middle of the field, and then all of a sudden we get a touchdown. Maybe Dan Campbell isn't as stupid as people wanted to make him out to be. Maybe these things are football, and a guy who played professional football for 100 years understands them. They're going to host a playoff game to go to the conference championship. And if that's not the coolest thing that you can think of right now, the Browns lost all their goodwill, right? With the way they treated Baker on the way out and how they went and got Deshaun and all that stuff. The Lions have been building this for just as long, maybe even more fun to root for. And then they put the product on the field to match. And that's the best part about this is there was, I think realistically, like this was about as even of a matchup as you can get. 24-23 would speak to that. But I think in 100 worlds, the Lions maybe won 51. And I was just hoping we were in one of those 51 because that was electric.
I did not think the Lions were going to win this game. And I'm glad that I picked the Rams because I think I put my bad juju on the Rams and allowed the Lions to win this because this looked like it was going to be a shootout of epic proportions. And then the defense showed up in the second half. And in years past, what we've seen under Aaron Glenn, and he's getting head coaching looks now, but last year that defense was a complete clown show. Like they couldn't do anything right. And I thought Collinsworth did a good job of kind of explaining it. You know what? We're going to do one thing well on defense and everything else will trickle down. Let's just stop the run. Because if they can't run the ball, we'll figure it out. We'll live with some of the big plays and we'll keep things in front of us. Rams beat them with some bombs in the Kua, but Cooper Kupp was a ghost. Really everybody else. I mean, Kyron Williams had been killing people, they holding them only 13 carries because they didn't feel like they could run on that defense. And with the offense being high flying on the other side, they're like, you know what? We kind of got to get away from this a little bit. That was impressive from Aaron Glenn, to say the least there. And for them to get into a defensive battle, which they've shown in the past they can't win, and it come down to that, and then have Jared Goff needing one first down to make the throw. It was poetic in a way. The Brown or the Lions who always get made fun of. It's like Trico said, same old Lions, right? The same old Lions would have not completed that pass. The Rams would have gone down, kicked the game-winning field goal. And instead of the tears of joy that we saw on Sunday Night Football, it would have been tears of the same old heartbreak. But this does not feel like the same old Lions because what Brad Holmes, their general manager that came over from the Rams, what Dan Campbell has instilled in this culture now, Tyson, they don't believe that they can just win these games. They believe they can win the whole thing. And I think you're seeing that right now. This team may be the most confident team besides the Packers. The confidence that these guys have are off the charts.
No, I believe them too. Like when I'm watching them play, I'm like, damn, maybe they are the best team in the league. And I've just been slow to reckon. And then they do stuff sometimes, but they leaned on him physically, right? To start the game, it was, we're going to give the ball to Demont. We're going to give the ball to Gibbs, which, by the way, maybe still too high to take a running back there at 12, but that boy can play.
I don't know, man.
That's a different thing on that offense. And again, we talked about the importance of coaching. I think Ben Johnson was that was masterclass for most of that game. The pre-snap motions. Amon-Ra St. Brown doesn't have anybody within 5 yards of him most of the time, and the announcers are going to tell you that it's his route running, which is a phenomenal route runner. Part of that is because we put him in situations to be one-on-one, and then when you win your route, there's nobody to pick you up, right?
Exactly.
On the flip side, like the Rams went 10-7 this year. They were dead before the season. They're going to win 3 games, and we don't even know how they're going to rebuild and all this stuff. And McVay just does it again. Matt Stafford, looks how he looks, and they hit on Puka Nacua. They hit Kyron Williams, finally a little late return. It's like when the IRS keeps your tax return for a little while, but the interest came through with all those touchdowns. Going forward, I'm a little bit worried about the Rams, but that's a topic for this offseason. I think that team should be proud as hell about what they were able to accomplish, because from where they were in the middle of the season when they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, and it was just kind of like, man, this is boring football. Like, this doesn't really look like an inspired team that has a chance to even make the playoffs, let alone has a chance to win a playoff game, to where they ended up, where if the ball bounces just a little bit different, Puka Nacua hauls in a touchdown, they win that football game.
Might have been the best coaching job that Sean McVay's done, to be completely honest, with how we viewed the Rams coming into the season. Matt Stafford doesn't know his teammates. Cooper Kupp's injured. Like, we don't know who he's thrown to. This offensive line's horrible. For them to win 10 games, and be competing against the Lions, who probably should have been the second overall seed in the grand scheme of things. It's impressive. It's super impressive. And I agree with you in, I guess, moments, and we'll talk about this more in the offseason, like you said. I'm way more bullish on the Rams going forward because I think their front office kind of figured out, oh, yeah, that's right. Young players are pretty valuable in this
All we
league.
need
Like, we
is
can win
fifth
with
round
them.
picks. Why doesn't everybody do this?
So I'm curious to see, and we'll dive into that this offseason. Obviously, the rumors will be flowing. They got to retain some guys. What does Aaron Donald do? You know, he was awesome this season, but he's flirted with retirement for the past couple of years. So we'll see how he's feeling. But like you said, they should be proud. This was an awesome game. They had a chance to win it. But I think everybody in America, don't take away anything from McVay or Stafford, because I think they're viewed favorably. But I think they would have been pissed if the Rams would have won this. So the Lions, I'm super happy. I'm happy they won. I think this is a great story. I'm rooting for them next week. They got the Bucs. They're big favorites at home. Detroit's going to get another opportunity. This is going to be just a great football story.
I'm going to need Eminem in the hoodie with hood up next game. There was a lot of hood down this game.
Okay, let's close here because the Dolphins, they got clowned, man.
This is how uninspired, the Dolphins looked. I forgot this was a segment on the show today. Ooh. And we talked about it before we went on. Look, we understand the team died. Everybody was hurt. They were picking up injuries to major players. That's not necessarily what we're taking issue with. It was like, hey, you guys want to go run 7-on-7 against the air? Because that's kind of what it looked like for the Kansas City offense at times. And then we love, Mike McDaniel. I think everybody loves Mike McDaniel. I think there are real concerns about Mike McDaniel in these big moments. And I think it's harder to tell after this one. Mostert's banged up, Waddle's banged up, Tyreek's dealing with stuff. It's not going to get easier, right? Because his natural inclination is going to be, let's score 1 million points. Like, that's how I want to play today. When it comes playoff time, Andy Reid knows, look, man, we might only need 17 to win this football game. Let's go out there and play physical, lean on them, control the clock, dominate the ball, time of possession, all those things, play smart. And then we'll look up at the end and we're winning the game, where it just kind of felt like Miami was either let's get it all back right now, or let's be methodical to a point where it doesn't make sense. Like, let's take 2, and then let's take 2. Oh, man, it's 3rd and 6. Like, I don't have a look for this.
It was jarring with how they looked. I mean, Mike McDaniel's coming out of the locker room saying we need to run the football. They didn't run the football in 2 straight possessions. I'm with you. I like McDaniel. I think he's a great mind. I like him as a person. Last year, I was more impressed with the Dolphins, what they had to overcome facing the Bills, than what we just saw against the Chiefs. I mean, this was legitimately scrimmaging on air. The Chiefs' offense, they were horrendous in the red zone, and that's what people should be focusing on, but that's getting glossed over because the fact that the Dolphins' offense was so inept that it did not matter that the Chiefs were completely horrible in the red zone. That Andy Reid big-brained himself. Mahomes was missing throws. There were drops, and they couldn't figure out they should run the football on the 2-yard line when they were getting 5 yards of carry. And that's a Mahomes thing, too, because he can check into that stuff. He just didn't do it, and it was really shocking to see. Yet it didn't matter because the Dolphins' offense was so bad. And there are major question marks about Tua. And I've always said I'm way higher on Tua than a lot of the general public. I think the reaction that, oh, Tua sucks or Tua is a bad quarterback is ridiculous. Look at everything he's done accuracy-wise. Finally got an offensive mind there. Finally got somebody that can block for him and then weapons. Oh, you're taking that away from him now? Like, we just started complaining about the Kansas City Chiefs and the lack of weapons that Mahomes had. So you can't have it both ways here. Yeah, Mahomes is better than Tua. I don't think anybody, like, you watch that game, you're like, oh, one guy's great, and one guy, you're like, holy smokes. They have some major question marks about this guy. I think when we talk about the Dolphins, they're going to have to figure out how much money they're going to pay Tua Tagovailoa. Because if he agrees to a reasonable contract and he agrees to something that you can continue to build and put pieces in place around him, I think you do that if you're the Dolphins. If he's looking for one of these mega contracts, $50 million, $60 million a year, I don't think in good conscience the Dolphins can sit there and say, yeah, we'll sign up for that. Because if you're in the AFC, you have to go on the road, especially against the teams we're talking about, Tyson. The Bengals with Joe Burrow, the Bills, the Chiefs. They're all outdoors. And at this time of year, it's cold.
In a dome. Texans are in a dome.
Texans are in a dome, yeah. So maybe that would work for him. But,
Yes.
That's the issue you're going to run into. Like, it's great when it's in Miami. It's great when you're indoors and everything works great and looks fine and you're feeling good. But when it comes to this type of stuff, we have to win on the road. When you have to do things outside and when outside your comfort zone, Tua Tagovailoa hasn't shown that he can do it, and that's the concern that the Dolphins should have.
Right, and I don't hear or see a ton of, like, let's go back to the Titans game as to why this happened, because you win that game, you're hosting, and it's a different feel right now, right? The Steelers would have been coming into their building, and we talked about it in the preview show. It's not necessarily like it is a Tua thing, but it's not just a Tua thing, and it's not just a Tyreek thing or Mike McDaniel. It's a Dolphins thing. Like, you can go back through the history of their organization. They just don't play well in cold weather, and there's probably the reason because they live in South Beach. But you can't I struggle with this because you can't on one hand kind of chide Mike McDaniel for not building his team to win in cold weather when it matters, when they play the first 17 when it's warm outside, and it's just it's little moments throughout the season. Like, they didn't show up against Philadelphia earlier in the year. They didn't show up in Germany against the Chiefs. They didn't show up against Buffalo the first time. They didn't show up against Buffalo at the end of the game the second time, right? They didn't show up the last 3 minutes against Tennessee. There's your season. So maybe if you're going to evaluate Tua, let's do it with all of his guys healthy that he's going to have next year. I don't know the running back situation, how that's going to shake out. I mean, if you thought Achane was going to come into that game and pound the rock, it's like you've never seen the dude before in your life. He's 170 pounds or whatever he is.
It's tough.
It's the same old question. It's just, I think this is going to be it. On the flip side, you're going to get rid of Tua Tagovailoa after the quarterback hell that you've been in
Right.
for 15 since you signed Dante Culpepper, right? This is where you're at. This is the best dude to walk through that door, since Chad Pennington had his little resurgence. And that's not hyperbole. This is a guy that should be on your football team. Don't overthink it.
We'll see what they do. It's going to be a long off season for a lot of these teams, especially the ones that got eliminated. Tyson and I we have a ton of content coming out, but we're going to be addressing things from the off season. Teams, we got a coaching episode that comes out, like, we're going to be looking forward and things like that, but we still got football to discuss. We're going to be previewing that. But Tyson, we know that there's going to be lines moving and everything. So where can they find our picks if we're going to be playing anything early before a preview episode later in the week?
They will be in the Chalkboard app. It's in the App Store, Google Play, wherever you download your apps. Our group name is ISWIS, presents the Roundtable Bets. You type that in, we'll let you right in. It's free. You can Venmo Brad. Normally people give him like $50 just for advice, but if you wanted, you don't have to. You can just get in there for free. It's fun. UFC 300 is coming up. We just got Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje added to the card, for the BMF belt. So that'll be something that's in there. But on playoff time, dude, these things are flying around. Like, these lines, like, they set them and then they just have to keep tinkering. And you got to get in there before, honestly, before we do our preview shows, because a lot of the time when we do our preview shows, the line has been set to what it's going to be. So, hop in there and tail fade, or just let us know what your angle is on the divisional round.
And in the meantime, like, subscribe, and share the show. If you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button on the way out. And if you're listening in podcast form, rate, review, 5 stars, comment, whatever you give us. Just any interaction just helps us become more discoverable in their algorithm. So we appreciate your support as always. Continuing the support, it means a lot to us. And if you want to stay connected in the meantime, our social media pages, it's all the same handle at ISWIS_pod. X, Instagram, TikTok. That's mainly where we're at. So give us a follow over there. We'll be back. We alluded to our filthy episode. That's going to be talking about the Eagles. If you want to listen to that, but we're going to be back doing preview episodes and our gambling episodes for the divisional round as well. So we got a lot of content coming out to you. Make sure to stay subscribed to that so you don't miss anything. And we'll talk to you all then. Peace.